Alright, in this lesson, we're going to look at styling with CSS and React. This course assumes that you have a light knowledge of CSS, so we won't teach it as a brand new subject to you during the course. However, I will treat it at a very introductory level. If CSS is second nature to you, then this lesson will probably provide value in the sense that it will alert you to some special rules and practices of using CSS to style our code with React. Here's a quick snapshot of what we're going to style in this lesson. We're going to style the color spectrum components we created in section 2 of our course and give them a background color and set the height and width. This course will differ from a lot of other React courses. Many of them link you to libraries with complex CSS or styling code that can often make the code they are teaching you output something that looks great right away. And if you're an expert at CSS, that's great because you can look at that code and understand and replicate it on your own. However, if you aren't a CSS pro, then when you are starting to build on your own, the visual results can be disappointing because you aren't able to manipulate your styling as well, and you didn't learn how to do that during the course. The projects we build together during this course may not look as flashy, but you'll have the experience to replicate what we have done on your own. Let's go to our code now, and the first thing we'll do is create a new folder that we will call Section 3. Within that folder, we'll follow what is our standard naming practice for our course and name this index.html. Next, we'll create a CSS file. We'll go ahead and name it main.css. Alright, now let's go to our section 2 folder and we'll copy the contents from our index.html file in it. We are taking the previous code because in this lesson, we're going to style our color spectrum components as we described in the beginning of this lesson. The first thing we'll need to do now in our section 3 index.html file is put a link tag linking to our CSS file. A quick review of what the link tag does in HTML. The link tag defines a link between a document and an external source. The link tag is used to link to external style sheets. The link element is an empty element. It contains attributes only. Also, this element goes only in the head section, but it can appear any number of times. In HTML, the link tag also has no end tag. The href attributes contains a value specifying the location of the linked document. Alright, let's go ahead and change our page title also to styling components. We can go ahead and remove some excess code. We'll remove our comments for our first component and also the comments for the challenge to create individual components. Now, go ahead and make sure this code works for you. Let's open this up in the browser. There it is. Now, let's go back into our code and style these 7 different components. First, we'll try something very similar to you if you have styled HTML before. We'll go into the h1 tag and add a class of red. We do this so that when we go to style with our CSS, we can target the h1 tag specifically with the class of red rather than accidentally targeting all of the h1 tags. Now, let's head over to the main.css file. We'll begin by targeting the red class by putting a dot in front of red. Then we'll open a code block and describe how we want that h1 tag with the class of red to actually appear. We'll list 3 property and value pairs. We want a property of height. We'll give it a value of 50 pixels. We'll separate this from the next property value pair with a semicolon. Next, we want a property of width. We'll give it a value of 150 pixels. Finally, we'll add a background color property and give it a value of red. This is standard practice that we've just done, and we know it works with styling HTML. However, I'll let you know right now that this won't work with React. And we're going to use the Chrome developer tools to see why. Let's make sure that we have saved our changes, and then we'll go back to our index.html. Make sure this is saved as well. Now, let's go ahead and open this in the browser. And the result is that our components are still rendering, but our styling is not coming through. Let's open up the console to see if we can get any help. There it is, the warning. Unknown DOM property class. Did you mean class name? The console is really helpful in seeing what you are trying to do and giving you a recommendation for what you probably meant to do. So why won't class work as a name in JSX, but class name does? We could go onto a rabbit trail on this and why the decision was made. Originally you could, but due to some confusion and bugs that sprung up, the decision was made in JSX to force the use of class name rather than class. No real reason to have to understand the whole backstory right now. We just need to know the rule. This is similar to rendering all of your components within one parent div because of the way that JavaScript operates. You don't need to understand everything going on behind the scenes, you only need to honor that rule that exists. Now, let's go ahead and head back to our code. We'll change class to class name, and we'll save our changes. Let's go ahead and open this up in the browser. And alright, there it is. Our red component has been styled. Now, let's go back to the code, and let's get some practice in by styling the other 6 components. Understandably, this can be quite boring, but it could be really good practice for you to help drill this in. And it should also cause you to ask, is there a better way to do this? Yes, there is, and we'll check that out in future lessons. In our next section, we'll see how to get the same amount of work done with a lot less code and a much shorter amount of time. But for now, learn the syntax and make it second nature. You can always go to the source code and copy and paste the final content if you don't want to walk through this yourself. Alright, there we go. The results we anticipated at the start of this lesson. In our next lesson, we're going to look at a slightly more React way of styling our code. See you then.